Welcome back to Fixing My Faith, and today on JW Discussions we will be covering the Bible stories on story number 20, Dinah Gets into Trouble. So this is a story that came to us from our last video, and it was brought to our attention by you guys, one of you guys. And so here it is. It was brought to our attention. We pinned it on the last video. And Booga Lugs says, I really appreciate someone covering Dinah Gets into Trouble story number 20 because this is the most dangerous, and I am positive from personal experience that this one story is enough to keep a victim silent. Dinah was just hanging out with her girlfriends, yet she is blamed for being raped. And when she told, how else would her brothers have found out? Every single man was murdered. That would include her girlfriend's father and brothers and maybe husbands. WTF. Then, just to top it off, Dinah's dad is angry with her brothers. Last paragraph, and I'm quoting, how did all of this trouble start? It is because Dinah made friends with people who did not obey God's laws. We will not want to make such friends, will we? No wonder children and adults are scared to speak out. No wonder so many of us are scared to make friends. No wonder so many of us are carrying the shame and guilt that does not belong on our shoulders. And no wonder we blame ourselves for absolutely everything bad that happens. Please make it stop. Any YouTuber out there, please, all of you, step up and debunk the horror stories. This story haunts me and holds me back in real life. And I know that I'm not the only one. It's so deeply embedded in our minds, sitting in our subconscious and shutting us down. Sorry for that rant, but I was badly triggered by your intro, and I just had to put this out there. Please help people to see Dinah as the innocent victim that she was. Just a normal kid who wanted to spend some time with friends. She did absolutely nothing wrong. Shechem is the guilty party, and only Shechem deserved punishment for the rape he alone committed. Moral of the story, make worldly friends and you will get raped. Tell anyone and innocent people get hurt or die. And this is pure evil nonsense, so why does this still mess with my head? I'm 53, was born in, and I've been out for many years, yet still this stuff messes with my brain, heart, and soul. Brutal. So our heart goes out to you, Boogalugs. Thanks for sharing this with us. And we are certainly gonna cover this article. So I went and looked at it, and it's quite a subject. Just like the subscriber brought out, this is an ugly story. And in fact, when I was doing my research and I Googled Bible stories and Dinah, there's no other religion that I could find that covered Dinah, this story, like this, and presented it to children. There's no other religion that would touch this story. And in fact, as I did my research, and I'll show you where my research went, I had to go to a Jewish women encyclopedia to get some more information. And this is certainly a subject worth covering. So let's cover it. Here it is. But first of all, we're going to talk about, this is a new thing we're doing. And again, you know, if you guys have questions, put them in the comments and we'll read them, and maybe we'll make a video on it. Because I believe it's important that we debunk all of this stuff, these Bible stories, and we repair the records that are in our brains. So this is how we're going to do it. We're going to go through the stories, and we're going to look at them from an open point of view, from an awoken point of view. So the first thing that the Watchtower does, and I'm going to only read the first paragraph, because when you go to their library in the introduction for the Bible stories, it says this. It says, this is a book of true stories. Well, that's false. And it says they are taken from the world's greatest book, the Bible. The stories give you a history of the world from when God began to create it right up until our present day. That's false. And they even tell about what God promised to do in the future, and that's false. These stories are all designed, purposely designed, handpicked by the Watchtower, and the Watchtower puts a bit of a twist on every story along the way. Now, there may be a few stories that might be pure and undefiled and that should be read to children. I'm not disagreeing with that, but there is a lot of stories in this book that are designed to twist the Bible narrative to suit the Watchtower. And we're going to show you with this first story that was brought up by our user, by one of the subscribers, is story number 20. Dinah gets into trouble. So when we look at that story, there's Dinah, and there's this worldly guy, Shechem. He's not part of the Israelite nation, so she gets into trouble. This is how they present it. You know, to teach the kids not to get involved with worldly people. So here it says, do you see who Dinah is going to visit? She's going to see some of the girls who lived in the land of Canaan. Now, it goes on to talk about this. Did Abraham want his sons to marry people from Canaan? No, he didn't. It was because these people in Canaan worship false gods. So here's the start of it. If we can go around the world and we can call everything false gods, this is the first part where Jehovah's Witnesses they demonize it. And they do this all the way through their Bible stories book. But here it is. These people in Canaan worship false gods. Well, really, the people in Canaan worship the same God that the Israelite nations were worshiping. They worship Baal. They worship the calf. And that's where Jehovah came from. And there's a whole story there. But so that's this false God thing is a Jehovah's Witness thing. They were not good people. So that's another Jehovah's Witness thing. Because they're making everyone out in the world evil and not good. So the Jehovah's Witnesses are not even Israelites. They're not even Jewish people. But yet they take this narrative that was way back then, 1800 years before Common Era. So that's got to be, what, almost 4,000 years ago. And they take it and try to apply it to the young kids in the congregation. And here's how they do it. Sure enough, Dinah got into trouble. So this is all Dinah's fault. Not Shechem's fault, no one's fault, but this is Dinah's fault. So they blame it on the women. Nothing's new, right? What did they do with Adam and Eve? They blamed it on the woman. So can you see that the Canaanite, it goes on to say, can you see the Canaanite man in the pictures looking at Dinah? His name is Shechem, you know, the guy up here at the top. Look at how he's looking at her, you know. Well, that's how they tell the story, right? We're going to read another story on this quite soon here. And it says, one day Dinah came on a visit. Shechem took Dinah and forced her to lie down with him. Now, did he really force her? Are they really telling the whole story? Well, they're saying he forced her, he raped her. While this bad thing that Shechem did to Dinah led to a lot more trouble. So when Dinah's brothers heard about what happened, they were very angry. Two of them, Simeon and Levi, were so angry that they took swords and went into the city and caught the men by surprise, they and their brothers, and killed Shechem and all the other men. Jacob was angry because his sons did this bad thing. How did all this trouble get started? It was because Dinah made friends with worldly people, people who did not obey God's laws. We will not want to make such friends, will we? So you see how the Watchtower takes this and twists this story to suit their narrative, because they want to train the children from infancy that everything out in the world is evil. It's going to bring death. It's going to cause death. So we're going to look at this whole story a little bit deeper and get the rest of the story, but we're going to have to go outside of the Watchtower, because I'm sorry, the Watchtower has a very narrow view. And the view here is that Dinah, this is all her fault. All her fault. So you kids out there, you little kids in the Watchtower, it is all your fault. This is what this is teaching. So let's get the different narrative. And you won't get it in any other religion that I could find that's going to teach this stuff to children. Because, folks, there's a mass murder that happened here, and we're going to get the rest of the story here. And it's actually a very serious event, and it's not Dinah's fault at all. So we had to go to the Shelvi Hymnian Encyclopedia of Jewish Women. And in brief, it gives a story of Dinah. Okay, now I'm going to go all the way down here and talk about this raped or debased, the question. So the story has been called the rape of Dinah, although not all scholars agree that she was raped or forced into sexual relations against her will. Unlike in the account of rape of Tamar by her half-brother Ammon, we do not hear Dinah speak or cry out in resistance before Shechem takes her. And further, while Ammon violently overpowered Tamar despite her pleas of the protest, it is not clear that Shechem forced himself upon Dinah. Rather, he took her, he lay with her, and he debased her. Now, in the biblical world of the ancient Near East, when a virgin had sex out of wedlock, whether seduced or raped, she was devalued in terms of her social status, bringing shame upon the family. Her virginity was crucial in negotiations over bride price and the family alliances forged through marriage. In the legal discourse around sexual intercourse with a virgin outside of wedlock, whether she was betrothed to another man or not, the woman was presumed to have consented, if she did, not to cry out and protest in the city and town, and to have been raped if she was taken in open country where her cries could not have been heard. So the woman's will or testimony was simply not taken into account. Given that Dinah was taken in the open country, her father and brothers presumed she had been raped, as the parallel term suggests. She was defiled, or treated like a whore, or it was deemed an outrage, whereas the seducer or rapist would normally be forced to pay the virgin bride price for the daughter and marry her, according to Deuteronomy and Exodus. Now, Dinah's brothers negotiate terms with Shechem and his father, and it says disingenuously, with no intention of sanctioning the marriage. And the story then may be read as a polemic against intermarriage, where abduction of Dinah became the pretext for the severance of ties with Shechem and the Hivites, one of the Canaanite tribes. So you see, there was a deeper thing going on here. There was already these tribes were trying to separate, and there was problems between the two nations or the two tribes. So these brothers, and it uses this word disingenuously. They disingenuously, with no intention of sanctioning the marriage. So we're going to talk about that a little bit further, what they did. But I want to look at the word disingenuously. And it talks about in a way that is not sincere, especially when you pretend to know less about something than you really do. And it sounds to me like that's how Watchtower is in court, when they're answering questions in court. And it goes on to say slightly dishonest or not speaking the complete truth. And that's what happens when Jehovah's Witnesses talk to the media. They're trained that way. They call it strategic theocratic warfare. And this could be where some of this comes from. And they talk about an artful, distorted misrepresentation, or perverted or twisted, having an intended meaning but altered or misrepresented. You see, and this is what the Watchtower often does in all of their articles. It's all twisted. There's other meanings. So it's interesting that they missed this in this article, that these men were using disingenuously, no intentions. They were deceiving. And, do we want to promote that? Well, the way I read the Dinah story in the Watchtower is they blamed it all on the woman, on Dinah. They did not even go after these guys. Now, let's read the rest of the story. These guys committed mass murder, and they deceived the other side. Now, how could there be any honor in that? That's what this story should really be about. Is this deceiving. And it wasn't even honor killing. Okay, I went and looked at honor killing, and an honor killing is, or shame killing, is a murder of an individual, either an outsider or a member of a family, by someone seeking to protect what they seek as the dignity and honor of themselves or their family. And it says honor killings are often connected to religion or other forms of social stratification. Most often it involves the murder of a woman or a girl by the male family members due to the perpetrator's belief that the victim has brought dishonor or shame upon his family name. And it says these occur in the Middle East and the North Africa parts of the world. So honor killings are often associated with rural and tribal areas, but they occur in urban areas as well. So they still happen today, these honor killings. But if you were to ask a Jehovah's Witness, do you agree with honor killing? What are they going to say? They're going to say no. But yet, in this story, they turn a blind eye to this honor killing, if you want to call it honor killing, but I call it a mass murder. It isn't even honor killing because they're not just killing Dinah. You see, honor killing would be that they would kill Dinah because she brought dishonor to their name, but that's not what happened. So let's go back. Let's read a little further on what happened. It says there, the narrative, however, is rife with gaps and ambiguities in which Dinah's silence and the divide between father and brothers loom large. First, the reader's sympathies turn to Shechem, even though he may have forced himself upon Dinah after sexual relations, and his soul clung to Dinah, Jacob's daughter, and he loved the girl and he spoke to the girl's heart. So in contrast to Ammon, after the rape of Tamar, and they're using this example, it's another Bible example, who banishes her when his hatred for her is exceeded in the love he had felt. So you see, there's a difference. Tamar was a real rape, but here Dinah was in love with Shechem. She just went outside and fell in love, and he was a prince. So further, it says here, further, he was so desired for her, Shechem, that he was willing to pay the very high bride price to find favor in the eyes of the family. And that was to get circumcised. It says, well, the residents agreed to circumcise themselves because they stand to gain not only the women, but the great many of livestock. So Shechem seems genuinely emotionally attached to Dinah, and this makes the brothers' deceit and wholesale slaughter all more heinous. So these are some real terrible words toward her brothers who went in and killed everyone. Mass murder. So further, Jacob keeps silent and remains passive throughout the negotiation. The reader does not know whether he approves of the marriage proposal. After the rampant bloodshed and the sack of Shechem, the patriarch denounces his sons, Simeon and Levi, for stirring up trouble for him and making him odious among the natives of the land and the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And he will now live in fear of retaliation, and despite having brought land near Shechem with the intention of settling down, he must move on. Later he curses Simeon and Levi as instruments of violence. Neither the tribe inherits the territory with definitive borders in the land, and the sympathetic depiction of Shechem and Jacob's opacity suggests the outcome might have been different had the brothers not taken matters into their own hands, avenging their sister's abduction with mass slaughter. So folks, there's the real story. The real story is this is about a mass slaughter. These brothers were completely out of line, and there was consequences because of it. They didn't inherit the land. This could have all been different if they would have just left well enough alone, let love cover its course, and this would have been a completely different story. But it was not Dinah's fault. So, folks, I hope you enjoyed getting the rest of the story on this, on Dinah getting into trouble. This is really a love story. Dinah was in love with another man. They fell in love. They wanted to get married. So this man, Shechem, and the whole tribe or whatever, they were willing to get circumcised at that age because his love for her was so great. And so they even made a handshake agreement with her brothers and said, we'll do this, and we want to form an alliance. And the brothers were heinous and devious. And they went out and they mass murdered them all, and then blamed it on Dinah. That's what the Watchtower did. Blamed it all on Dinah. But now we know the rest of the story. So thanks again, folks. I hope you enjoyed this part of the Bible stories, because it certainly gives us a different narrative when we do a little bit of research. So folks, if you have some other stories that are burning a hole in your mind, please send them in. Please send them in to us. We'll put them in the comments here below, and we'll certainly look at making a video on it. But this is certainly interesting because we were programmed, a lot of us, I was programmed with the Bible Stories book. And this is how the Watchtower gets programming into us. But it's very important that we deprogram or debug ourselves and put in a new record and understand these stories for really what they are. And some of these stories, folks, should never be given to kids in this manner. Imagine this, a mass suicide that is brushed over. The Watchtower doesn't even touch on it, but it's in there. It's in the scriptures. But the children are learning about this, and they're thinking it's okay because they're worldly. You see, but there's the other part of the story. These Dinah's brothers were held accountable for this, and there is accountability for murder, for killing people. Love prevails, but murder is something that does not prevail. So the Watchtower needs to redo these stories, but we know that they won't, because this is their narrative, and they're trying to program from infancy the children to think that all people in the world are evil. And this is the Watchtower's narrative, and this is what we'll see come out of these stories as we dissect them. So thanks again, folks, and until next time, keep living your life with love. Bye for now.